James Wan, writer of Saul, stole my story. I copyrighted a brand new story never done before in 2005, and James Wan took it in 2006 and made the motion picture Dead Silence. Watch this and you be the judge. In 2005, I wrote a brand new story about an old woman ghost. An old woman ghost being the main character had never been done before. I gave this story a brand new list of ideas, scenes, and characters, including imagery. Brand new imagery, which under the copyright law cannot be used. People do simultaneously come up with the same ideas that are brand new, never done before. But there are so many brand new ideas, characters, and scenes that have been used in the movie Dead Silence. So many that James Wan cannot say this is just a coincidence. Furthermore, it is illegal to take a brand new story and alter it where the story still resembles the original body of work. When Dead Silence was being promoted, they promoted themselves as a brand new story never done before. I sent my manuscript off to over 100 publishing houses in 2005. In 2007, when the movie came out, I could not believe what I was seeing. If somebody steals your story, they're not going to keep the story the same. Of course not. You have the certificate. You can sue them. They're going to slightly alter the story so they can still get credit in creating the story, get paid for the story, and then just say that everything is a coincidence. Unless you have a lot of new ideas. Let me give you an example of what I mean. You remember 1980s Freddy Krueger? Okay, Freddy Krueger is a fine example. It was a brand new story about this man that haunts your dreams, and if you die in your dreams, you die in your real life. Well, you can't own that idea, so someone else could have used a regular man that came into your nightmares and killed you in your dream and you died in real life. Even a bunch of creepy children, even an old woman ghost. But if they were to change his hat into a cap and change his red stripes into red polka dots and change his 5 razored fingers into a hook where he still resembled the character, that is a copyright infringement. And just like Freddy Krueger, my main character, Susan Pale, is also a trademark character. Her last name being Pale, and that's the title of the book, Pale. He took Susan Pale and turned her into Mary Shaw. 80 years ago, Susan Pale was an old woman pianist that lost her hands trying to save her baby's life. 60 years ago, Mary Shaw was an old woman ventriloquist who lost her voice trying to make her puppet baby appear alive. Susan Pale had lost her hands but got her hands back supernaturally. Mary Shaw had lost her voice but got 2 voices back supernaturally. After a little boy teases the old woman about the loss of her baby and her hands, the old woman kidnaps him. After a little boy teases the old woman about the loss of her voice and her puppet baby, the old woman kidnaps him. Since the little boy had teased the old woman pianist about the loss of her hands, she made him eat a pair of hands. Since the little boy had teased the old woman ventriloquist about the loss of her voice, she cut out his tongue. After the old woman kidnapped the little boy, she put him in a secret room below her bedroom window. After the old woman kidnapped the little boy, she put him in a secret room in her bedroom wall. When the kid had made fun of the old woman, there was only one witness. That goes on in the story, Henry Witz. When the kid made fun of the old woman, there's only one witness that goes on in the movie, Henry Walker. Henry was shocked to see that the old woman pianist had grown her hands back. Henry was shocked to see that the old woman ventriloquist had supernaturally spoken in 2 voices at the same time. Henry goes on 80 years later to warn the main character about the old woman ghost. Henry goes on 60 years later to warn the main character about the old woman ghost. The main character will stop into Henry's shop. Henry becomes a friendly old man ghost who runs a produce store. The main character will stop into Henry's shop. Henry becomes a friendly old man who runs the morgue. Wow, did you see the original and then the copy? What I just showed you goes far beyond any coincidence, but there's a lot more. Let's go. I might have things to do. It's 80 years later. Susan Pale is an old woman ghost who haunts the small town of Desselton. On record, this is the first story ever of an old woman ghost being the main character and killing off a small town. It's 60 years later. Mary Shaw is an old woman ghost who haunts the small town of Ravensfair. On record, this is the second story ever of an old woman ghost being the main character and killing off a small town. Susan Pale chokes people when they're scared. Mary Shaw cuts out people's tongues when they scream. Susan Pale pretends to be 8 different people that she murdered. Mary Shaw pretends to be 7 different people that she murdered. Susan Pale pretends to be 10 different children who spy on people. You find this out at the end of the story. Mary Shaw pretends to be 100 puppet children to spy on people. You find this out at the end of the story. Every time Susan Pale attacks, there's a supernatural darkness. Every time Mary Shaw attacks, there's a supernatural silence. The old woman ghost starts to taunt Dan and Mary Kunix. She lowers the lights, they become scared, and she chokes them to death. In the motion picture Dead Silence, the old woman ghost starts to taunt Lisa. She lowers the sound. She gets Lisa to scream and she cuts out her tongue. The hero in both stories is a white male in his 20s, with light brown hair, brown beady eyes. Growing up in a small town, they both heard the ghost stories about an old woman who roams the woods with her children/puppet children. And in my story, if you're scared, she'll choke you. And in the motion picture, if you scream, she'll cut out your tongue. Both heroes are suspected of a murder the old woman ghost committed by a detective. In both stories, at their lowest point, the leaves fall down in slow motion. Mine, he goes to the boathouse, he gets drunk, he's missing his parents, he starts to cry, and the leaves fall down in slow motion. In the motion picture, he goes to the funeral to bury his wife, he's missing his wife, and the leaves fall down in slow motion. Then I describe when he sees the old woman ghost for the first time, his heart is pounding through his shirt. Suddenly the old woman ghost enters the boathouse window, and in the motion picture, when he sees the old woman ghost for the very first time, the motel sign outside of his window makes the sound of a heartbeat, and then he sees the old woman ghost sitting at the window. In both stories, they end up teaming up with a detective to go look for the old woman ghost in the woods. In mine is a chase scene at the river, and in the motion picture, a chase scene at the lake. And in my story, the old woman ghost pulls him into the river, and in the motion picture, she pushes him into the lake. Now, in the copyright version of my story, at this point, Calvin actually dies off, and a new family enters the story, the Brooks family. Now, what James Wan did is he got rid of this family here, and kept the character Jamie that resembles my character Calvin. He had Jamie Ashen go on and do all the important scenes that the Brooks family did. I'm going to wrap this up for you in just a few seconds, but before I do, this is very interesting here. Susan Pale killed Calvin Kunix's mom and dad. Mary Shaw killed Jamie Ashen's wife. The word pale actually means ashen, which is the last name of the main hero in the movie. Susan Pale, pale means ashen, and Jamie Ashen, ashen means pale. And this gets more bizarre. The word pale also means Wan. And I'm claiming that James Wan stole my story. So the word Wan means pale. It also means ashen. So you got Ms. Pale in my story, the main villain, Mr. Ashton, the main hero, and then James Wan is the one who stole the story. Wan and Pale and Ashton, they all mean pale. Look it up. There's only 3 major scenes in the movie that we have not covered yet, so let's start off with the first one. Sarah stops at a produce store ran by Henry Witz. Jamie stops at a mortuary ran by Henry Walker. Henry is a friendly old man ghost who runs a produce store. He warns Sarah about the old woman ghost. Henry is a friendly old man mortician who warns Jamie about the old woman ghost. This is the same scene here. We've already established that both Henrys is the same character and play the same role. Not only because they have the same name, or because they're 2 old men with light blue eyes that warn the main character about the old woman ghost. It's also because they're both the only 2 characters in both stories that were in the flashback scene where the old woman kidnapped the little boy and placed him in a secret room in her bedroom or below her bedroom window. A little boy being kidnapped by an old woman has never happened before, and this makes them the same character in a new story that until I wrote Pale has never been done before. You remember that famous wall doll scene? Next I'll show you where he got the idea from. The second important scene is the second to the final scene in both stories. In Pale, the old woman ghost pretends to be a little boy and the family dog and leads Mark Brooks out into the woods to the old woman's house and into the secret room where she had kidnapped the little child that made fun of her baby and her hands. In the movie Dead Silence, the old woman ghost pretends to be Henry and leads Jamie Ashton and the detective out to the woods, out to the haunted theater, and into the secret room where she had kidnapped the boy who made fun of her tongue and her puppet baby. Shh, don't tell. In this secret room, Mark Brooks is ambushed by 10 children, which is really the old woman ghost, and their faces stretch. In this secret room, both characters are ambushed by 100 puppet children, which is really the old woman ghost, and their faces stretch. Now for the shockful ending in both stories. Sarah is getting away. She knows not to be scared, or the old woman ghost can kill her. Jamie is getting away. He knows not to scream, or the old woman ghost can kill him. Sarah does not know that the old woman ghost was pretending to be her children. Jamie does not know that the old woman ghost was pretending to be his father. Sarah arrives at her children. They stand up and melt into a shadow. Sarah becomes terrified. The old woman ghost comes out of the shadow and is now able to choke her. Sarah dies. The old woman ghost goes backwards into a shadow. Jamie walks over to his father. His dead father is made up into a puppet. It was the old woman ghost that was moving him around. Jamie screams, and the old woman ghost is able to cut out his tongue. Jamie dies. Due to the uploading rules on YouTube, I cannot share any more at this time. Please share this video with somebody. Thank you for watching.